Well, this week, we wanted to bring something to the forefront that I think our listeners would appreciate when it comes to having data at your fingertips and really having the agency to know what to do with it. I mean, we are literally the first generation of people who can walk into a doctor's office with months of our own health data and have genuinely informed conversations about our body. And if we are not careful, those data points could start running our life. And I think that is where we kind of need to figure out that healthy middle, where the 90% healthy method literally operates, where I want this data to help me become more resilient, more informed, and more aware, but I don't want it to give me anxiety.
I have a quick favor to ask before we start. I'm not even asking 30 seconds of your time. If you have been enjoying the 90% Healthy podcast, which truly appreciate if you hit subscribe, it genuinely helps us grow and reach more people and keep bringing you thoughtful conversations about health that actually moves the needle without losing your mind. We're really, really grateful that you're here and continue to be. Now let's jump in the episode.
Welcome back to the 90% Healthy podcast. Hey, Don.
Hey, Klaudia, how things?
Things are good. I can't complain. I'm going to Biohackers World. Well, when this podcast airs, I will already be back from Biohackers World. But nonetheless, I am looking forward to it. So I will probably
I just got back from Peptide World Congress out in Scottsdale. What a great event. So love getting out there and interfacing with just all the different cutting edge kind of technologies, whether it be nutritional or peptides or wearables or things like that. It's just fun to see these people and see what's going on.
Yeah, especially SSRB. I mean, Dr. Seed's conference is so solid when it comes to science. You don't see a lot of BS there at all.
No. It is straight up. They work very hard to curate that product so that the vendors they're legit.
That's true.
And that's a good thing because, in this business, we have so many, what's the word I'm looking for? We have so many people throwing shit at the wall.
Yeah.
That may not be legit. And so, I think it's important for us to, I don't think it's our job to say they're not, but I do think it's our job to say this is.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah.
So,
well, this week, we wanted to bring something to the forefront that I think our listeners would appreciate when it comes to having data at your fingertips and really having the agency to know what to do with it. I mean, we are literally the first generation of people who can walk into a doctor's office with months of our own health data and have genuinely informed conversations about our body. And if we are not careful, those data points could start running our life. And I think that is where we kind of need to figure out that healthy middle, where the 90% healthy method literally operates, where I want this data to help me become more resilient, more informed, and more aware, but I don't want it to give me anxiety.
Yeah, it came, listen, the topic came from, I've talked about it before. I'm a huge fan of Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher's work. Scott Galloway's, he had a piece a couple weeks ago on his No Mercy, No Malice on optimization. And man, it really hit home for me. And so I was listening to it and I immediately texted it to you, said, we got to listen to this because, and he talks about the fact that we can't let optimization take away from just living. And we talk about this a lot, and then we go throw this in. I think we had a couple other concepts come in over the top on this, but yeah, it's about the 90% healthy. They talked about the Pareto principle that you get 80% of your benefit from roughly 20% of the initial investment. Now, the other side of that goes like this, that if you want to close that last 20%, it takes 80% more it takes 4 times the investment in energy to get that last 20% as it did the first 80. And it's when you get caught up in that, it's kind of like approaching the speed of light. There's no level of mass that can travel at the speed of light, and the amount of energy it takes to get there is just exponential. And so where is that sweet spot that we can sit in, get the most out of, I've talked about my definition of fitness, the physical capacity to enjoy the life you're given. I think that's critical. it's, my definition of fitness is not the number of days I'm alive on earth.
Yeah.
My definition of fitness is not on a scale. It's not on a barbell. It's not there. It's, can I enjoy this life I've been given? And everything I do works towards that. So I think, but now we have some really cool agency on our ability to really pay attention to some critical things that we used to have to make an appointment 3 to 4 times a year at minimum to get work done. But now it's right there on our fingers and wrists a lot of times.
I 100% agree. And honestly, the reason why we're having this conversation in the first place is because you and I have both seen the individuals who are making decisions based on their data at level that becomes restrictive. And in my opinion, health should be liberating. And
Yes.
all of this data, I sometimes feel like puts a handcuff on people and just really restricts you within the realm of optimization.
Right.
And I think it's something to address. And you and I aren't the only ones. I mean, there's a name for it, which is orthosomnia, where people are literally losing sleep over having the perfect sleep score. And it's really sad.
Yeah, and the challenge is not getting caught up in the micro, constantly being able to take the step up and look at this from a 30,000 foot level, look at the macro. And, if things go well today in the podcast, we will kind of explore those realms and see what we can do, for our listener. At the end of the day, our goal is for our listener to have that great life, to enjoy the life they're given. And we want to be part of that. Now, we spend a lot of time talking about the micro, but at the same time, we spend a lot of time taking a step back. I know I look at my HRV data most days, but it's a look the same way I look at my speedometer occasionally. Okay. I usually look at my speedometer if I see blinking blue lights somewhere, or if my my mapping software says, oh, there's a police officer, then I refer to my speedometer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I really don't look at it. So the question is what are the speedometers in your life from a physical standpoint? When should you look at them? And then move on from there.
Yes. And you and I mean, I look at my HRV every morning. It's really rare that I don't, but it doesn't determine how I feel. It's
No.
often the second thing I do after I wake up and already have either a brief meditation or some type of a morning, hey, how I'm doing subjectively and having an awesome day. And then I look at my HRV, and if my HRV tanked 15 points, it's not going to ruin my day. And I think a lot of people could fall into that trap. We're like, oh, I thought I was good, but I guess I'm not. And then we start to have issues. And I mean, honestly, the reason, again, why I love talking about this is because having traveled so much this past couple of years and really not being able to establish a set routine on a daily basis or weekly basis, I finally was able to realize how much resilience I was able to build, literally living according to that 90% mindset, where my body, no matter how many time zones across the country or world I'm in, it can still handle stress and it can still do whatever I need to do without sabotaging with my mind how much stress I'm under, I mean, there were times when my sleep score was like 25 and my HRV was really not great, but that didn't mean that I beat myself over it. I'm like, okay, that's what happened. I mean, it happens. But then again, you bounce back. And I think there is a power in looking at trends and seeing how things are changing. But we're having this for the first time in medical history. I mean, when we go back in time, the one thing the doctor asked you was, how are you feeling? And then you kind of describe, this is what's going on. But nowadays you can bring, I mean, some people do. I mean, I would bring your HRV data, your sleep data, your glucose data, your different trends. If you want to really look at, I mean, when I go to my PCP and I tell them, oh, things are this way, I get a little bit more detailed, and they always look at me with like big eyes. I'm like, why are you telling me all this data? I'm like, well, this helps you make better diagnosis of how I'm doing.
Shouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a good time.
Well, and I think I think we're living at a transition right now, Klaudia, in the medical practice, and from the standpoint that that we now have the ability to walk into our doc's office with agency, whether it's a glucose monitor that I've been using, whether it is HRV, whether, any number of things. There's new tech coming out all the time. We're going to see blood pressure in real time. We're going to see a lot of these things in real time. And oh, by the way, I believe there's a lot of docs out there that want this. I think there's a group of docs out there that were trained a certain way, and they have their routine like the rest of us. And when someone comes in, it really throws them off their routine. Well, I've got a feeling a decade from now, the office visit is going to go away. Okay, we're going to have our data. It's going to go onto a platform. Our data is going to get better. Okay, what we're getting right now, it's very early stage, very early. This has not matured at all. It is very nascent technology. But I think a decade from now, you're going to have a check-in with your physician, your medical professional. Listen, I think anybody listening to this podcast, when there is a symptom, when there is something they're not sure about, they go to Dr. Google or Dr. Claude right away. Okay. Yeah. So they're already self-educating. They're already starting to figure things out. We used to, when we didn't have those tools, you went to your doctor, says, oh, my knee hurts. Now I can search it ahead of time. Now I'm going to say, hey, my lateral collateral ligament is sore. I can feel it. I'm palpating it, yada, 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 or it swells up this. And we can take the symptoms and create a situation where it becomes a more realistic evaluation for our medical professional. I think that's going to move out of the office and onto the computer. And it's going to be backed up with a lot of data. And you're only going to go into the office when something needs stitched up, when something needs cleaned up, when something like that. Listen, we're already doing it. You know what? A year ago, I had flown into New York City for a conference. I woke up and the side of my head was swollen. Okay. I had an infected hair on the back of my neck that had gotten up underneath my skin, and between the flight and the night of sleep, boom, I take a picture. Now I have a relationship with my primary care doctor that I can do this. I take a picture of it. I send it to him. We have a text exchange back and forth. They call in a script to a pharmacy there on Times Square. I have an antibiotic and we move on. That was pretty cool. Okay. I didn't have to go to an urgent care and talk to a doctor in New York City. I didn't know. I was able to do these. Well, I think this just gets better all the time. And I think it's just a matter of time. We are developing an incredible amount of agency. I'll say it again. But our challenge is being able to not obsess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of people are obsessed. And honestly, you mentioned that there are wearables coming out all the time. And okay, so there was a story last week that I came across. This wearable, wrist-worn wearable has raised over $11 million out of Stanford. That they say they're going to continuously track female hormones. Now,
I've seen a couple of these. Yes, this is interesting.
Very interesting. And then, of course, they've gotten a lot of backlash because they're not like tracking your hormones per se, not at all. What they're doing, they're tracking different biomarkers, assigning those to different algorithmic interpretations of those biometrics, and interpreting your hormones based on that. But then again, I mean, I understand how important it is to start tracking the female hormones. Perhaps continuously. I think semi-continuous would be just plenty. But imagine how much overload could that be for a lot of women, especially those who perhaps may already be stressed. And of course, the accuracy, I also don't really know. It just sounds like a different types of ordering because it's tracking temperature, it's tracking HRV, tracking all the other things, and then inferring hormones based on that. But then the accuracy, I still question big time. And I saw a lot of controversial comments on just LinkedIn, people talking about how the validity is questionable, and also just telling a woman who's going through menopause that your progesterone is low today. I don't know how that's going to land.
Well, listen, it's the responsibility of the organization that's presenting the technology to do the work. When I was at the SEEDS conference, I saw our friends from the hormone testing, Dutch test.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
saw our
Oh,
friends
that's
from
cool.
Dutch Test and had a nice talk. I was talking to them again.
I'd
Again,
love to do
if
that.
if if you're a female, premenopausal female, I have a strong recommendation that you go get a Dutch test done so that you have a profile of your hormones prior to menopause, so that when you go through, it can be matched forward. We know this works really well, but it's on now. These researchers coming out of Stanford, they better have some side by side work looking at both what they're interpreting electronically, whether it's blood flow or temperature or whatever, the algorithms they do, and how does that correspond to blood tests of the hormones that they're doing. That's on them. Okay. And I've got a feeling that probably comes. The other thing to too is not to tell a woman, oh, your progesterone's low. I think it's important to say, you might be feeling this today.
Yeah.
If you're feeling this, or you might want to pay attention to this today. We've been telling women that they're essentially little men for way too long.
Way too long.
Okay. And from a hormonal standpoint, my friend Misha Tate does a really good job of this on her podcast and talking about this. And Misha she's a trained MMA fighter, MMA champion, and she trained like a little man forever. Well, now she's learning that, you know what, there are some days where she needs to change her training from what a man would do. A man runs on a 24-hour cycle. We're really easy to figure out. Female, much more what's the word I'm looking at? Sophisticated. Complex, sophisticated. Yeah. Absolutely. And no one's saying that you don't train. No one's saying that you don't compete. All we're saying is recognize what's going on. And I'll tell you a perfect example of this for men. When we were working with the wrestling team back in, I think it was 2016, the guys had gone home for holiday. They're coming back for right after the new year. And we have a 5-day training block before our first dual meet. And it's the last time I can do a deep training block with these guys. So they're coming back and I'm getting ready to bury them. We have a training workout for the first day back and we're burying them. I run an HRV study on them before we get back. The worst HRV data I'd measured in the entire season. What we learned is family stress is the worst stress of all.
It's not great.
Okay. We had to give these guys 24 hours just to get back on campus, get back in their campus routine. Boom, all our HRVs popped. We missed a day of hard training. That's okay. Because that day of hard training, if we had done it, it'd have been too much. They weren't ready for it. Okay. This is going to be the same thing. When you have the recognition from the data that we can make better decisions, that is agency. That's where the value comes. There's good and bad that we always have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and one of the other reasons that we brought this up is because you sent me a few PDFs of Bank of America running an analysis of data how much people spend on certain types of stuff, especially in wellness. And it was really interesting how much there is a acceleration of spending when it comes to wearable, health and wellness products, and just really things that are supposed to give you more agency over what you're doing.
Sure.
But in the same spectrum, there is the Global Wellness Summit that in 2026 that came out with just overall trends of what they're seeing in the country, or actually probably globally. And over optimization backlash was one of the 10 defining wellness trends of the year. So we're buying a lot more stuff. We're obsessing over what they're telling us. And not only that, another thing that I found was that the wellness industry and this wellness spending is about a $7 trillion industry growing up to be $10 trillion. Now, healthcare spending in the US and the problems that cause massive spending in the US are also $7 trillion. So we have created a $7 trillion industry to solve a $7 trillion problem that the industry put into place in the first place.
Right.
So it's just wild how things sort of come together. When you really look at some of the data points, you look at some of the corresponding elements of behavior and what people want to do in order to be healthy and counteract the choices that they have made. I mean, over-optimization has been highlighted in Psychology Today and a lot of different publications because it is something that fatigues people.
Absolutely. you know what, ultimately, and I think we're going to talk more about this as we get to the end of the show, but ultimately it's about establishing routines. Now, there are times when, listen, you and I were talking about the story about this before we started recording, and that while I was at a conference in Scottsdale Friday and Saturday, if you look at my data, it was brutal.
Yeah, but did you have
Because
fun? You had fun. It was worth it.
oh my God, I had fun. I wouldn't miss it for a minute. And at the same time, I take a step back and say, I like to think about it. Do you ever have a great meal and you get to check and you're like, wow, that was more than I was expecting. But you take a step back and you're like, but that was a damn good meal. That was worth every dime I put into it. There's some times I sit down at a steakhouse and you have that T-bone, that tomahawk T-bone that's $100 for the damn steak, but it's worth every bite. Okay, I realize our vegans out there are probably retching at this point, but that's one of my favorites.
Just fast forward.
But it's worth it. Well, what I know is that trip that I made out there was worth it. I didn't spend dollars on the trip. I spent energy on the trip. I had to cash in a lot of the resiliency that I'd built up before that. When I got, it was funny. The first, I kind of had a weird flight out, worked all day. The guys I was out there with are like, hey, we're going out to dinner tonight. I'm like, thanks. I'm going to grab dinner next to my hotel and I'm going to be in bed as fast as I can. So I go from a 30 sleep score to a 90 sleep score. And then the flight back got messed up to a 30 sleep score. Next night's a 90 sleep score. So tonight's, we're going to start to see it regulating here a little bit. Excuse me. But this is part of the challenge. And I think this is I think we've talked about this before, is that number on the device shouldn't decide what you're going to do that day. No. It's part of a trend. It's, you have the routine that you're putting in. And we'll talk more about this at the end. What are the things that go into the routine? But we're not making snap responses. I'm not judging myself. In fact, if I look at a whole number, not only am I not going to judge myself, I'm going to have empathy for myself. I'm going to have compassion for myself. And I think that's just an important human trait that we all could develop. And you never have enough of that. But having that compassion, it's difficult to have compassion for others if you can't have compassion for yourself. It's difficult to have empathy for others if you can't have empathy for yourself. This is where it starts. And if you have that going in hand, maybe we should print that on the back of all the wearables. Don't judge yourself. It's okay. It's the speedometer in your car. And you know what? If you're exceeding the speed limit and you get a ticket, pay the ticket, learn from it, and move on. That's what's so important. And then probably buy a car that doesn't drive as fast.
Don't beat yourself up over it. And I think that is what a lot of people do. And I have been there. But it was long time ago at the very beginning of me starting to use wearables. And another interesting data that I found, I think it was also in that Global Wellness Summit review, where they noted that roughly about a third of wearable users quit within 6 months, and about half eventually abandoned their tracker entirely. So, which sort of tracks with how people are with any type of change in behavior when it comes to health-related items. So whether it's I'm going to get on a diet. If it's not working, a lot of people, instead of pivoting and giving themselves some grace and some compassion, like, okay, I messed up today, they quit entirely. So that translates over to wearables too.
Yeah, and I found that to be an interesting observation. And as we take a look at that, I think it's what's so important is that my experience with people with wearables is that a lot of the investment in wearables early on were done by people looking for confirmation that what they're doing is good. Well, the wearable doesn't always say that. And instead of learning, they throw the wearable away. They stop using it. And this is, again, I think this backs up those documents I sent you. So I have a very good friend, Wes Odsley, who was a former vice president of YMCA of USA. So he's been in this struggle with us all. I mean, they're doing it from an institutional standpoint. We're doing it from a personal education standpoint, but we're all in the same game. And I think that as we take a look at this, I constantly want tools. Listen, I'm sure the first person that put a speedometer in the car was all bent out of shape that they had to pay attention to it. I'll tell you what I distinctly remember. I'm old enough to remember when seatbelts became required. Okay. That when I was growing up, it wasn't required that you had seatbelts in your car. Certainly didn't need the shoulder belt. And when all of a sudden then it became required that you wear the seatbelt. Then it became required that they put the shoulder belt in the car. There were people bitching and moaning about this the whole time. Okay, I shouldn't have. Or we hear it with motorcycle helmets. If you have a helmet law in a state, and it's like, listen, the data is pretty clear. When you wear a seatbelt, you die less when you drive. When you wear a helmet, you die less when you ride your motorcycle. When you wear a bike helmet, you die less when you crash your bike. That's all people are saying. And what we're doing is hopefully with a wearable or a piece of technology, it's not, if this is the 0 to -10, that's the dying part. We're talking about 0 to 10. Can the wearable help us move up to the 6, 7, 8, 9 level rather than flirting with the -6, 7, 8, 9 level? I think that's an important part of it.
Yes, 100%. And as you're building up to that 6, 7, 8, 9 level, that's resilience that you're building up. So when something bad happens, you might slide down to a 5. But eventually, within a week, you bounce back up, or 2 days, you bounce back up to 6 and 7. I mean, I remember when a few years ago, I was still living in LA and I celebrated my birthday with my friends over there. It was all day. We were out in a boat, drinking, eating. It was nothing healthy about it besides that we were out in the sun and grounding and
But it was living.
It was living. It was wonderful. I woke up with a terrible data the next morning, but instead of beating myself up over it, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I had a low-key day. I did sauna. I walked. I had a low-key day. And thankfully, I was fortunate enough, it was a Sunday, so I was able to not have to do anything.
Sure.
And then, so Monday, I woke up with 85, 90 sleep score, and the recovery was back up. So it's information that you have to use for your advantage. And I think it's important. And I think a lot of people who have been listening have heard a lot of experts we have brought on who talked about nervous system regulation and just the power of the nervous system and how much it impacts your aging process. Even, I mean, last week or a couple of weeks ago, we had JP Erico on who had a new theory of aging.
And a very cool theory of aging, and I think there's it makes a lot of sense.
A lot of sense. Yes.
Yeah. One of the interesting topics at the conference, when I was at SSRP, I was there helping the team from Ketone Aid. Ketone Aid makes products called ketone esters, and these are really cool products. I don't know how much have we talked about this much on the show. I don't think we have.
A little bit, not a lot.
So here the science goes like this. The ester, a ketone body, is what you get when you break down fat. And the one you're looking for is what's called beta hydroxybutyrate. This is what goes into the cell, into the mitochondria, into the electron transport, and just improves the efficiency markedly. The ester is bound to what's called an R13 butane which is a dual alcohol, dialcohol, 2 alcohols. Well, they have a product that's called a hard ketone, which is there's no beta hydroxybutyrate. It's just the dual alcohols. And if you drink enough of the R13 butane, you'll get a buzz. So it actually works through the alcohol pathway. It actually lands on an alcohol receptor, but it doesn't have the effect of addiction. Yeah. And so there was a lot of doctors there talking about they have a lot of patients who are wanting to get into peptides and wanting to optimize and wanting to do this, but a lot of them drink alcohol, probably too much. And when we gave them the concept of the hard ketone, Frank Yosa, who runs Ketone Aid, he has these texts from these doctors saying, I'm getting patients off of alcohol using this product, which was really cool. But in the context of the conversation was, I think the Oura Ring and the Whoop band and the self-monitoring has done more for cutting alcohol consumption than anything else we've done in years. People are aware of it. That's a big swing. I stopped drinking alcohol back when I went and worked in the cannabis industry. I started to understand cannabis. I started to understand cannabinoids. And you know what? If I feel like changing my mindset, or what other word we're looking for there, I do it with cannabinoids. And I may do it once every 3 years. I just don't do it. This is part of being third of your life, right? I'm not, I don't need that anymore. I'd rather go to bed. But this was an interesting thing that came up. Everyone I was talking to there, of these doctors that were there, they all were wearing personal measurement devices.
I'm sure.
They all had a Whoop band. They all had a Hume band. They all had an Oura ring. Ironically, no one was using their Apple Watch to measure any of these metrics. They were all using one of the more specialized devices. I found that to be interesting. But yeah, this has been a good tool to help you. You know what? I was my college buddies and we had a crew, and Klaudia, we went hard. I mean, pretty much 7 days a week out of season. I would stop drinking 3 days before a match, 2 days before a match. The match was the third day, but we were out that night and we were going. And you know what? I could do it. I could get through practice. I thought I was recovering. Now that we have the technology we have, I realize I was leaving money on the table. I could have been better than I was then.
Yeah.
So, and now, I don't consume any alcohol. I take that back. My buddies were together for a dinner about 3 years ago. One of the group had passed away. We drank a shot to my buddy.
Yeah.
And I'll do that. I'm not a teetotaler, but at the same time, I'm paying attention to behaviors. I'm paying attention to the things that I do that are eventually leading down the road to this definition of fitness. My definition of fitness, we've talked about it on the podcast, the physical capacity to enjoy the life I'm given. That's the thing I want. I'm constantly focused on. My goal in life is not the highest HRV possible. The highest HRV possible. Well, it's not the highest sleep score. It's simply, I need to get to a destination. My destination is the physical capacity to enjoy the life I'm given. My speedometer along the way is my wearable data. But I still have a map of behaviors that I follow in order to get to the destination that I'm looking for.
Yes. I mean, and data is, and as you mentioned, that everybody at that conference was wearing a wearable to measure, and that is true because data is a wonderful direction to change behavior or toward behavioral change. And I think that's why we're seeing people changing their alcohol habits and changing their dietary habits or when they have their last meal, because they notice the data showing them that their capacity to recover is a lot better. And if we want to maximize in one thing, we should maximize on how well we sleep, because that is very important.
And know that there's a give and take to everything. Okay. When you decide to have the bottle of wine, you're going to enjoy it. I don't want to minimize that at all. Okay.
No.
But know that there's a price that you pay. Okay.
Everything.
There's a metabolic price that you pay. Now you can take a step back and say, do I really want the wine? Do I really want the liquor? Do I really want the alcohol? If it's going to cost me something tomorrow. And you know what? If you're out with your friends, if you're out doing your thing, I swear to God, if I was still your age, I would probably still consuming alcohol. But it would be at a different level than what it was when we did. We were big ouzo drinkers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. We drank ouzo like it was water.
It's like a medicine. So herbal.
Well, it was good. But we just don't do it anymore. And I would do it very differently now that I have the information, I have the data. I realized that it was affecting my goals. My goal as an athlete.
Yeah.
What I know is I probably paid a price that probably cost me some steps on the podium.
The podium.
So, no regret. It's okay. I have great friendships. I have great memories. We tell great stories. Wait till I tell you the story about the pig roast that we had on campus.
That sounds
fun. these are wonderful. I've forgiven myself. I'm not judging myself for that. And all I'm simply trying to do, and when I work with a young athlete now, is just be aware. I get it. I get it. I get it. I don't want to minimize it, And I think there's challenges that go with it. Listen, alcohol lubricates social relationships. Okay, that's a good thing. Many times.
In certain relationships, for some.
But don't use it to bury yourself. Don't use it to really. Yeah. So there's some times when it's an excellent part of life, and I don't want to minimize that at all.
No, I agree. Everything, and even with that, before I think let's jump into some of the ways to keep the agency and not the obsession. But I do want to point out that optimization should never come in a way of fun. Like, have freaking fun. Like, life should be a joyful journey.
Right.
With a little bit, obviously, a few ups and downs. You can't be like a happy camper all the time. But I think, and I'm sure we've seen this with people like even Brian Johnson, he was lonely and miserable as much as he's optimized on everything. And now that he has a girlfriend, things are better. And he was probably being a little bit more lenient on himself, like do not stop having.
There's any number of things I could say there that I am keeping my mouth shut on. but yes, I think your observation is spot on, and let's go ahead and just move on.
Okay, we're moving on. Okay, so what does it look like to have the data, use the data, make sense of it, and really build a resilient body to a point where you're happy, healthy, and feeling pretty darn good every day, most days?
Yeah, listen, we look at this. First of all, keep the data in context. Okay, the data shouldn't be driving the decisions. The goal drives the decision. Okay, the goal, and this is what's so important. It's important to have agency. It's important to learn as much as you can. It's important to be self-informed. And I don't want to minimize that. We already talked about this in the show. I think it is excellent that today, if something doesn't feel right, if something isn't good, you can go to Dr. Google or you can go to Dr. Claude and you can start to explore what you're feeling, what you're seeing, what's happening, so that when you go to your healthcare professional, you go informed. You can have good conversations. I know my doctor loves having these conversations with me. Here's what I think's happening. And our last one was I decided to stop taking metformin. Metformin is one of these things that can be a longevity enhancing drug. But you know what? When I take a look at its role in electron transport, I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to use that anymore. I backed off of it. And my doc's like, it's a good decision. Now, I could have probably also said to him, listen, I'm struggling with this. I need a little bit of help. I need a little bit of a step up. And to use it at that point would have been great. But in our last, it was funny. I said, and I've also backed way off on my blood pressure medication. Well, he was all pluffed up on that. Goes and grabs the cuff. He says, I'm going to measure it. Well, you know what? My blood pressure is in a pretty good place. So I have a pretty good handle on my own existence. Okay. But that's why you need someone to work with. And I love this idea of bouncing ideas and having discussions with healthcare providers and healthcare professionals. And frankly, I think they like it too. I think they like engaging on this. So bringing data to that discussion is great. It's an excellent tool. Understanding, you talked about it with the JP Erico episode that we did, that your ability to regulate your nervous system may be the most critical element of health span, lifespan. That's what really excited me about that paper. And if our audience hasn't heard it, go back and listen to this episode. That, we talk about HRV all the time as this tool, as this speedometer tool. Well, if what that paper's saying is that when you really get that speedometer tuned in, is that if you're going to tell you, are you over revving the engine too much with sympathetic stress, or are you recovering and doing what you need? And I love that as a tool because, I think our notes say agency was always the goal of the optimization culture. Obsession is optimization's failure. God damn it, I cannot speak. You say it.
No, you go. Okay. Agency was always the goal. Now,
Right.
see, now I can't say it either. Agency was always the goal of optimization culture. And
Right.
that is true. We started to optimize to become aware and have responsibility of our health.
Right.
But that obsession is optimization's failure
Mode. Yes.
mode being in place. So it's really we've a lot of it's again, I don't want to generalize because I think most people still do it right. But I still think there's a large, maybe not most.
I don't think it's most, Claudia. I think
No?
I think there's a lot more Aura rings on the desk, not charged, not being used, than there are being used at a good level. I think we got work to do there, but I want people to understand you can have the upside without the downside if you're aware. If you build the self-awareness and you build that in, and I think that's important.
Yeah, you and I are an example of that, which is why I love that we are hosting this podcast, because we're not preaching something that is unattainable.
No.
Because I think we're an example of how to, and I don't mean to put us on a pedestal, but I just want to point out that it's possible. It's not terribly hard.
We fight it every day. I love eating shit food. Okay. I am not someone who has a clean diet. My diet is horrible. Okay. But I manage it by making sure I get in the necessary nutrients.
Yeah.
And over time it gets better. And you use tools. Like I said, GLP-1s come into play. They can be very beneficial. Using the tools correctly are important. By the way, I've been paying a lot of attention to this. Both Laura and I are noticing an effect on our HRV when we use the GLPs. It actually lowers HRV, raises resting heart rate. So I've still got to work out the physiology on that. I'm not there yet. I've made the observation. Now I've got to go figure out the science.
Okay.
But as we look at this, it's going to cause me to go look. But the other thing too is that it's not a silver bullet. Okay. There are silver bullets that we'll talk about. Medication is rarely that. It's a step up. It's an assist. It's a tool to bring along. So, we'll move on from there.
Yeah. Okay. What can we do? What are we, or what do we ought to do? What are we going to do to fix this obsession cycle?
Well, let's take our eyes off the data and let's put them on the goal. Okay. As I've said, no one takes a picture of the scale and hangs it on the wall in a frame. You just don't do it. Okay. No one takes a picture of their scale and puts it on social media and says, oh, look at my number. No one does that. Okay. What people put pictures on the wall for, and what people put on social media, are what I call trainable life events. Okay. These are the things that you put the pictures on the wall for. And I think the first step, if you want to change lifestyle, is to sit down, look at your calendar over the next year. What events do you have coming up? What are things out there that if you are in better condition, if your fitness is improved, if your lifestyle is improved, that you'll be able to go to that event and enjoy it more? Okay. First step, get the goals, get the pictures, and maybe go into a magazine. This is the reason I love these boards, these vision boards. Yeah. I love these because you take those and you put it up there, but I don't want pictures of you skinny. I want pictures of you at the beach. I want pictures of you at the wedding. I want pictures of you at graduation. I want the pictures that when you show up, and you know what? We are now in June. So we got July, August, September, October, November. We have 5 months till Thanksgiving. We have 5 months to an event where we're guaranteed we're probably going to be with family. Okay. That's what happens on that week. Okay. You know what? Train for Black Friday. Okay. If you want, but get that event on the calendar, put it on the wall, put it on your mirror, put it on the front door, put it on the dash of your car to remind you this is coming up. This is why I do what I do. This is the reason I'm pushing back. So start with the goal, start with the purpose. That purpose can also be a picture of your kids, can be a picture of your grandkids. Okay. It can, I want to be there for my kids. I want to be there for my I want to be there for my great grandkids. It could be that period. That just reminds you every day of why you engage in the process. So start with a purpose.
Yeah, why in any context has a very powerful pull. And I think that's why people who know their why, whether in a personal, professional context, they persevere longer.
Mm-hmm.
They will push through, what's the word, obstacles. They push through adversity because they have a larger North Star they're going
Sure.
toward. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So, and then we go to what we call the rocks in the jar. Now, I'll tell you, Klaudia, I talked about this, I think 2 podcasts ago or 3, where I said I've added a 5th rock to my jar. We'll talk about all 5, but the rock of community, the more I'm paying attention to this, the more I'm like, okay, this is so important. And so once you have your goal, then start to think about who is the community that's going to help me get to my goal. Okay. And it might be going to join the YMCA, great community event. It may, CrossFit's kind of aggressive. And if you've got an aggressive goal and that's where you're at, that's fine. But I don't want Joe Bag of Donuts thinking they got to go sweat puddles and do kip ups in order to be successful. But get in a community rec center, community YMCA, build community. It might be at your church. It could be it could be training in the facility in your apartment building. Figuring out community is what's so important. And that community can support the other 4 rocks. Okay. And we're going to talk more about community on the podcast as we go, because this is, I don't have a good, what I call structure to really throw out there, but community can be one other person. Okay. Just someone to talk to give you a look. So it starts with community, trying to build community. It doesn't have to be excellent. Just start. Number 2.
And before you pedal on, I do want to point out that community, it's one that's increasingly front and center for a lot of people in this field of pulling of health optimization, because it's me at first, like I want to fix me, but then standing on top of the world all by yourself doesn't really feel that great.
No.
So it's community and purpose. It's being around a group of people and being there for a group of people, because it's the one thing that's worth it. You can have the most perfect diet, the most perfect everything. If you are alone and by yourself, it's not really worth it. And I think a lot of people are realizing this now. That's where we are in this world. I'm noticing, real world and live events are very popular. People are interested and want to connect in person. This connection element is starting to be very, very front and center.
And it doesn't have to be like it was. Klaudia, you and I saw each other, what was it, 3 weeks ago now? We've been doing this podcast for over a year and a half. Well, this is now episode 70, 64. We're right there. I mean, 64. And we have been in the same place one day in the last year and a half. God, it was so nice. It was so nice to give you a big hug. It was so nice to see our friends. That was, and it reminded me, I get a little emotional. It was great to feel the love that I felt when I went into that building, having been away from it for a year and a half. It felt the same thing when we went out to Seeds and saw friends. It's just nice to have community. And our community, you and I we commune with each other on a weekly basis. We do this. And then we have conversations, and we have friends, and we're going back and forth. That is community. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. It does, and it's a bit energetic, and our body, our biology loves it. It's hungry for it, and the love you feel is the reason why people keep going back, because we all feel that love, and it's irreplaceable. A screen like this is great, but it's not the same chemically in our body.
Well, it's better than nothing.
Better than
but
nothing, but
yeah,
yes. But
and
some
can
people don't even
facilitate.
do this. Some people still like
Right,
text, which is
right.
again even one level below.
And if that's where you're starting, you again going back to purpose. What is that thing that you're working towards?
Yeah.
Constantly working that direction is so important. So community is part of that. Once you're working on community, move more. Okay. Here's what you're going to learn about the exercise industry. Everything's better. This is better than that. This is better than that. Here, you know what's better? Do something. Okay. Step 1 through step 1,000 is
Yeah.
do something. Okay. If you walk a little bit, walk a little bit more. If you don't walk at all, walk a little bit. Just move more. This is what the data is very clear about. You'll hear exercise experts, well, I do Tabata, or I do Norwegian 4x4s, or I do CrossFit, or I do High Rocks, or I do this, or I do that. Okay. That's them. You just do a little bit more. Okay. Just a little bit more on a daily move. You can hack it. There's a lot of ways to hack it.
Yeah.
I like to have a scoreboard. I think heart rate monitors are important. I think they can be an important scoreboard to use along the way, but don't get obsessed with it. Simply let it give you information. Again, when you're going to sit down with your doctor and said, listen, I did 120 minutes a week in my zone 2. Here, take a look at that. Your doctor is going to look at you and say, wow, they're going to be really impressed. So just, use your rocks. Movement, you hack it with exercise, just do a little bit more. That's that rock. You know what? I don't know. You're a dancer, so you probably like group. You like exercising in groups.
Not in the setting of the gym.
Okay.
I enjoy working out when I go to hit machines and not
Yeah.
but if I do enjoy group fitness, if the instructor is great, like
Right.
it really has to be challenging. When I go back to Hungary every now and then, there is a gym where there are a couple of instructors who are bomb, like they kick my ass.
Yeah.
And I love that. I don't go to the gym to hit the bar when I'm in Hungary. I go to these classes. But here I haven't found that type of intensity, so I just do my own thing. It's great.
Well, on the other hand, on group exercise of any kind, thank you, no thank you.
I know you don't like it yet.
I train by myself. Okay. Yeah. When I start training, I get into flow. I put my headphones on. I get pulled in. I get focused. Don't talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to follow anything. Leave me alone.
I love that.
So that's just the way I train.
Yeah.
And so, everybody's different. Find out what works for you. Laura, my wife, on the other hand, loves group. Loves group. She's so gregarious, and she drives a lot of it, but that's just who she is. She's a much nicer person than I am. She gets along with people better than I do.
Oh, well, what's next?
So the third rock we're going to talk about is nutrient dense food. Okay. Don't obsess with all the numbers. Okay. Maybe take a look at what's missing. Are we getting enough vitamins? Are we getting enough nutrients? Are we getting the critical elements that we need? You know what? Here's the general beat. We know that we can back down on sugar and carbohydrate considerably. And there's a lot of benefit to increase protein. And oh, by the way, there's some benefit to increase the kinds of fats that we want. Since we had the podcast with Tommy Wood, I have been making it a point to eat sushi a little bit more often because that's how I get my omega-3s in. And it's not fancy sushi. It's grocery store sushi. Because Tommy said, that's okay. He said, any downside that may be there is certainly made up for by the quality of the omega-3s you're getting in. So I usually eat grocery store sushi, tuna,
What's that mercury,
salmon.
though, over time?
But Tommy told us that mercury, first of all, I'm not childbearing. Okay. That's one element. Number two is Tommy told us that, you know what, it's hard to eat that much. It's hard to eat that much salmon or tuna.
That's true.
So that's what he told us. And it's like, okay, I'm going to, and it's a $10 thing of sushi a couple days a week. And that's a change that I've made to make sure I'm getting those omega-3s in. For me, it's a big deal. Now, I supplement that with my HRV Plus, the supplement that we make that has the omega-3s with the SPMs. Those are good. They help me a lot. But that's some of the change. Get nutrients in. Don't worry about taking stuff out until you really move the needle on that.
And we've got 2 more, right? We've got
2 more. Sleep, measure it. You know what? It's what Einstein say. Everything that's important, just because you can measure it doesn't mean it's important. And everything that's important may not be able to be measured.
Yeah.
So this is what's important. What we do know is sleep is important for us. A routine circadian synchronization is important. That's where a wearable comes into play, and start to play around, figure out what works, what doesn't work. So sleep, figure out your sleep environment. And then finally, light. Are you getting nutritive light into your eyes and onto your skin at the right time? And are you able to eliminate the blue light that has come from from phones and technology and TVs and all these things? When the sun goes down, try and be in bed. And when the sun comes up, time to get up. It's that old farmer mentality. Now, I realize you have to adjust these things depending on lifestyle. If you're a firefighter or if you're someone who works a midnight shift, it's hard. And all of a sudden you got to start thinking about optimization techniques. But those are the 5 rocks. Purpose is critical. What are you there for? Build community, add movement, nutrient-dense food, good sleep, and get light in your eyes and on your skin at the right time, and eliminate the toxic light as you go. Those are kind of our rocks in the jar.
Yeah. But also, do not pour that jar onto top of your head all at once and try to do it all at once, because that will freaking fatigue you and burn you out. So and that's where it comes down to small, consistent steps that we talk about here, whether you think of them as 1% shifts and 1% changes over, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, or is it micro steps? Regardless of what your terminology is to say small, you got to make these small changes consistently over time that will lead to improvement. Because if you get your light, your sleep, your nutrition, your movement, your community, and your purpose all on point for one day, that is not going to move the needle at all long term.
I was to add one more example in here. I like to ride bicycles. I've had 8 knee surgeries. So walking and running for me, just it's just not a good investment in what I do. I like to ride bikes, but I've not been riding this lifestyle that Laura and I are in, of this RV lifestyle. It has not been good for my cycling. Well, about a month ago, I have an e-bike that we bought that I use as like a scooter. When we pull into a campground, we usually have to go find our site. So instead of dragging the truck and the RV around the campground, I pull this e-bike out, unfold it, and drive it around the campground. Well, lately I'll have to make a run up to Lowe's to get a part for this project that I'm working on. Well, I've gotten to where I'm riding my e-bike up to Lowe's, and I'm wearing a heart rate monitor just now. Am I using a shitload of electricity to get my ass up to Lowe's? Yes, I am. But I'm using just enough physical energy to get the zone 2, zone 3 response I want. Otherwise, I would be driving my truck to Lowe's and I would be getting 0 investment in movement. So it's just little things like that. And my Laura and my buddy who I'm working on his house are like, you can't ride your bike after it's too dangerous. I'm like, I'm riding my damn bike. I got my helmet on because I am moving. That's how important it is to me. So you make these changes along the way. Listen, the pedestals are not in my life. Okay. I am constantly down in the ground, digging the ditch, working my way through it. But having a plan to work towards this really helps. What's my goal? What's my purpose? My purpose is to be a great dad, to be a great husband, and eventually be a great granddad, and hopefully a great great granddad.
Yeah.
That's what I want to be there for. So that's what I constantly tune against.
Yes, I love that. And I know it might take a minute for some people to figure out what that purpose is, but that shouldn't stop you from taking the time to figure it out.
Yeah.
And when I was at the Asprey conference, I listened to the keynote by Jay Shetty, and he said something very interesting, that a purpose doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to make you money. It doesn't have to be a person. It doesn't have to be, there was something else, but it's just something that when people cross your path, you leave them happier. So
be nice. I mean, boy, there's a start.
Damn it.
Just be nice.
Yes. So to wrap up, I mean, I just wanted to highlight how much, as much as you and I always talk about data and just metrics, all of this being available was never the goal itself. Like, data itself was never the goal to have more and more and more of. But the goal was always the person and you being more capable, more empowered, have more information and more resilience than you had before, because you are so much more aware of this suit that you're walking around in.
Sure. Your meat suit.
Yeah, meat suit.
Your earth suit, your meat suit, there's a lot. And we didn't even get into spiritual and psychological and so forth. This is just the start. But I thought it was important. It's about living. It's about quality of life. It's about living. And obsession with data is not living. Again, remember the Pareto principle. You get 80% of the benefit from 80% of the benefit from 20% of the investment. This is what moves the needle the most. And whether it's 80% or 90% healthy, they're right there together. Let's just get some basics put together, because it can be life-changing, but always live life.
Yeah. On that note, keep on living life and subscribe to hear more ways to live life better, and send this to somebody who needs to hear it, who may have been
share it.
Yes.
And comment. If you think we're full of shit, tell us. But if you think there's something here that helps us, we want to hear it. Please comment, share, and follow, because it sure helps us do better.
100%. And if you want to find out more about Don, you can go trainrecoverwin.com. You can find him on LinkedIn, and you can also, Don is also, you're also on Instagram with both your name and Train Recover Win. And also, people go look up Mode Method, which is
Mode Method. Yep.
Yes. And you can find me at Longevity Journalist on social, and my website is also Longevity Journalist. And of course, LinkedIn, you can reach out and say hello. Yeah.
Klaudia, have a great week.
You too, Don. I will see you soon. Hopefully not in another year and a half.
No, hopefully sooner than that.
Yes.
See ya.
Bye.